Hello, my name is George Attallah. Today, I will be presenting to you for group number 5 regarding retrofit buildings for the debate assignment. Our group has taken the pro stance. I've worked in collaboration with James, Ananya, and Pranav. What is a retrofit? A retrofit generally refers to modifying an existing building such that it becomes more energy efficient, or updating elements of its structure and safety that may be outdated. This topic has gained attention because many buildings, both public and private, use large amounts of energy. Older buildings, in particular, tend to rely on outdated systems, which contribute to higher greenhouse gas emissions and increasing operation costs. As these issues become more visible, the question of whether existing buildings should be updated has become part of a larger conversation about long-term sustainability and economic practicality. There are also concerns surrounding retrofitting. The process can be expensive, particularly for older or historically complex structures. This may require buildings to close temporarily during renovations. This can financially challenge those business owners or property owners who will be kicked out of their homes temporarily as they are being renovated or retrofit. At the same time, the push for change is influenced by rising climate concerns and the growing cost of maintaining older, less efficient buildings. Many of these factors have prompted ongoing discussions about whether retrofitting is a necessary step moving forward. After this introduction, our group will transition into the position we were assigned for today's debate, Pro. In order to understand the issue of retrofitting comprehensively, we first need to understand why retrofitting is needed. This is primarily an issue of energy and infrastructure. Poor energy performance in existing infrastructure doesn't just come from lighting. Many older buildings rely on outdated heating and cooling systems, poor ventilation, and inefficient water heating systems. This comes from Fernandez's study. Note that these components together create substantial energy waste. At the same time, global demand for buildings is rising. One study found that more buildings will be required in the next 40 years than were built in the previous 4,000 years. Yet, most construction industries still follow traditional designs that rely heavily on fossil fuels. This comes from a study by Chen et al. When we combine that trend with the fact that the construction sector already accounts for about 36% of total global energy usage, even before buildings are occupied, the scale of the issues becomes clear. If older, inefficient buildings remain as they are, new traditional buildings continue to be added on top of them, we end up increasing fossil fuel dependence significantly, and thereby accelerating our resource depletion. This will worsen climate-related risks, such as extreme weather and long-term instability. This is ultimately the backdrop that makes retrofitting part of a much larger conversation. So let's talk a little bit about the scale of this problem. Currently, most buildings still operate on older fossil fuel-based energy systems. These fuels are non-renewable. That makes them a finite resource. And many people underestimate how much buildings contribute to emissions compared to vehicles. The reality of the matter is, both private homes and commercial buildings are major contributors to climate concerns. Again, coming from Fernandez's study. Reports that nearly 75% of existing buildings are energy inefficient. And there has been relatively little investment in improving this sector. This implies that the majority of structures we rely on every day are losing energy, losing money, and increasing emissions. So let's look at the solution that we propose. Retrofitting, or particularly when discussing retrofitting, one of the main components is the integration of renewable energy sources. Solar energy is currently one of the most widely used options. According to Chen et al., widespread adoption of solar panels in buildings could save governments up to $202 billion in long-term energy costs. Wind energy is also a strong option in areas with limited sunlight. Current wind installations have already prevented around 600 million tons of greenhouse gas emissions. Further, there's the option of biofuels. This is a less common solution. The production of biofuels requires agricultural resources, and therefore there are concerns about deforestation, which make this option a little bit more complex. But the three options in tandem illustrate that existing buildings have multiple pathways to become more efficient. So, how does this all align with the codes of ethics that we've studied in this course? This issue clearly has ethical dilemmas, but we've identified several relevant clauses in the ACM and SEI Code of Ethics. ACM 1.1 says to contribute to society and human well-being. This, of course, is supported by the effort to reduce pollution and environmental risks. ACM 1.2 says to avoid harm. This, of course, aligns with addressing the environmental damage caused by energy inefficient buildings, as well as the potential risks of living in outdated building infrastructures. ACM 3.1 says to prioritize public good as a central concern. Of course, this points towards long-term social benefits rather than the short-term convenience of not leaving your house or paying an upfront cost if it is within reason. The SEI Code of Ethics, specifically Principle 1.05, emphasizes cooperation in addressing matters of grave public concern. Climate change and energy instability clearly fall under that category, particularly with the emergence of high energy consumption data centers. We now look at this through the lens of Kantianism. Kantianism posits that if a policy can be universalized without contradiction and treats all individuals with respect, then it is morally required. A universal rule, such as buildings should be maintained in a way that does not cause preventable harm to current or future citizens, is clearly consistent with Kant's categorical imperative. Allowing buildings to continue emitting unnecessary pollution would treat affected populations as mere means for our convenience. Retrofitting upholds a duty to avoid causing harm and respects others as rational beings who deserve a livable environment. So, by Kantian reasoning, the idea of maintaining energy-efficient retrofits is supported. Further, we look at a case study on the Bullitt Center in Seattle. We can see the real-world impact of retrofitting principles in buildings like the Bullitt Center. Completed in 2013, it was constructed with a large solar panel system as its primary energy source and became one of the first commercial buildings to achieve net zero energy status. This means that it produced more energy than it consumed. This is a major win. Since adopting solar energy, the building's operational costs have dropped dramatically, so it saves money long term. Of course, the building also collects and filters rainwater, which further reduces energy and water consumption. I'd like to highlight the Bullitt Center as an example of what happens when modern energy systems are built into existing infrastructure models. One of the strongest practical arguments for retrofitting is the economic benefit when we compare investments in fossil gas infrastructure with investments in renewable energy systems and building efficiency. The difference is dramatic. Here on the far left, you see retrofits far exceed renewable energy solutions and even more so fossil fuel solutions. particularly in the number of jobs per $1 million investment that you see here on the left side. So this graph shows that the economy benefits long-term from implementing these retrofit solutions. Retrofitting isn't just environmentally useful, therefore, it is one of the most job-intensive and economically stimulating forms of infrastructure spending. So, let's look at some policy considerations. From a policy perspective, governments can play an important role. They can help to highlight the benefits of retrofitting and encourage the commercial adoption, which often influences private homeowners as well. Obviously, the biggest barrier is the upfront cost, particularly for private homes. The public may have concerns about reliability of solar or wind solutions in areas where there's not much sunlight because of cloudiness or inconsistent wind. But these concerns will be addressed with clear communication and well-designed incentives, and more particularly improved solutions with greater adoption, as energy nowadays is designed on a grid infrastructure. And so energy sharing is a possibility. So that was the presentation. I hope that you have learned about retrofitting and its use. Thank you.